First-round draft pick Kevin Carter, defensive lineman from the University of Florida. Thanks for joining us. For Keith, I'm Dan. Bye-bye.
Nobody controls the old man of these mountains. Not even the young men who know him very well. His disposition can make or break the best in this sport. Everyone wonders how he feels today. The finish line in Paris is still 1 week away, but the only way to get to the Champs-Élysées is to take the mountain roads. Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian, Karsten, welcoming you to ESPN's exclusive coverage of the 1995 Tour de France presented by Michelin. So, you think the tour has been tough so far? Just wait. There are still some riders who believe that Miguel Indurain is beatable. Now, granted, today we go into the Pyrenees. It's close to his home. He trains here. But it's been a long time since this many riders have been this close, this late in the race. And for the first time in 5 years, his team Banesto is beat up. Laurent Jalabert has cracked him. His Once teammate, Alex Zula, in third place overall, says this race is not over. So today we go into the Pyrenees as we begin the last week in the 95 Tour. It follows 150 miles yesterday when Lance Armstrong turned in an all-American performance. It didn't take Lance long to make his move. At 24 miles into stage 13, he and Sergei Uchikov broke away and built up what became a 17-minute lead. The contenders kept a union pace. Indurain and his Banesto bodyguards, because of the pace this week, more than a little bit beat up. Then just over 15 miles from the finish, a three-man chase group took off after Armstrong's lead quartet. Motorola teammate Frankie Andrea right there. Lance held the lead for 125 miles, then Uchikov kicked it in.
So the next move from Uchikov, we've seen Uchikov's team manager up here a number of times, and now he's probably said you've got to try a kilometre from the top of the climb. Lance Armstrong straight on him here, and that's a good move, and he looks cool.
And in fact, behind race radio telling me that in fact the two riders, Buenahora and Kengielza, are watching each other. They don't want to make the move first, and these two riders have got a great lead.
A street fight for a stage win. One had the lead, then the other.
Uchikov is going to ride close to the barriers on the left, so Armstrong must come over on his right shoulder. Give him only one way. Armstrong now begins to make his move. Uchikov goes immediately, but goes right to the centre of the road. Armstrong holding the back wheel of Uchikov. Very shortly, Armstrong is going to have to kick, but I don't think he's got it. Uchikov has everything. Uchikov takes it on the line. Armstrong will be very, very annoyed about that, but he never had it on the line.
Annoyed and then some. For a young man who hadn't won a stage since '93, disappointment after his day's work.
I was surprised. I mean, they said he was fast, but I didn't think it was that fast.
How does it feel to get so close to a stage victory in the Tour after '93? It's been a long time.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, I really feel bad. I can't tell you how disappointed I am.
But so...
I was out there 200 Ks, and every 200 of them, every one of them, I thought for sure I was going to win. And to get second, that's devastating.
But you're going to carry this tour right through until the end, and there's still a couple more chances.
There is, yeah. I mean, it's a day like today you don't come across very often to go into a break and get 15 or 17 minutes. And I mean, those days just don't happen. And I mean, I'm always looking, but it's going to be difficult.
Behind Armstrong's effort, the main field led again by Team Once, the strongest team in this tour.
Well, here comes the main field being led by Jimenio Diaz-Zabala of Once, with Neil Stevens just behind as they line up for the finish. They're all going to lead out Laurent Jalabert. But I'll tell you what, this is for 12th place. A number of riders have nipped off the front of the peloton in the closing kilometres. They've already finished, and they've got Bruno Cornier just in front of them. Diaz-Zabala now trying to bring Laurent Jalabert to be the best of the rest. There's Cornier. He might just hang on. Now it's a final kick by Neil Stevens, then he'll swing away, and then they'll try and launch Laurent Jalabert. I don't see, oh, do I see? No, I don't see. In fact, yes, there he is, popped out now. Jamaluddin Abdul-Jabbarov coming clear on the right to take on Laurent Jalabert. He's going to steal a couple of points in the green jersey, but it won't really matter today, and Jalabert tried a little kick at the end.
Overall, Lance Armstrong gained a lot of time and respect. He moved from 43rd to 26th. Alex Zula, 2:44 behind Indurain, and then teammate Jalabert. Well, this is what happens when you win a stage at the Tour. A little smooch for Uchikov. This morning, Lance Armstrong was looking ahead, not back.
I mean, I have to try and turn the disappointment into something positive and try and the bike race isn't over. We got another week, and okay, the next few stages aren't great because of the big mountains, but hey, there's more stages, and I'm not going to sit back and give them away. I just have to fight and try and get another one.
Little man Marco. You know, the leaders can't pick on Pantani much anymore. Maybe the best climber in the last 10 years. Up in the Pyrenees, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen now.
Well, Adrian, as you can see, the weather here is low cloud and light misty rain. At the moment, it's quite unpleasant. But here in the high mountains, the weather can change and often does very quickly. But if it doesn't change, Paul, Miguel Indurain won't like these conditions.
He won't be a happy man because he hates the rain and he hates the cold climates as well. But the big advantage for Miguel Indurain today, I think, is the fact that all these climbs come in the latter part of the stage.
Well, don't forget, the Oncé are well placed to attack. Miguel Indurain today is 31 years of age. He doesn't seem to get any weaker, but will they go today?
I have a feeling that they won't. They'll wait till later in the week when we get into the big long stages in the mountains. But you know what? I think Miguel Indurain will let the riders go, the lesser riders of this Tour de France, as he has done over the last few days. But if they all come together at the bottom of this climb, I think we better watch out for Marco Pantani.
At 34 years of age, Tony Rominger, over 8 minutes behind Indurain overall, says he'll race one more Tour de France next year. Happy birthday, Miguel, for the 31st time. They'll actually be singing in the rain by the time they get into the mountains, though. It'll be about 74 miles into today's stage 14, 102 total miles through Indurain terrain, his home not far from the French Pyrenees. From the streets of Saint-Orens, we're way down into the south of France, almost to the Spanish border now, as we go into the Pyrenees. Today we're going to see some pretty heavy hills, 6 climbs altogether. The tough ones are going to come toward the end, as you can see. Just wait till we get to the downhill turns on the Col de la Trappe, and then we'll finish on the Guzet-Neige. The summit there, 5,000 feet. Here comes the peloton. Let's get out to Phil.
The story so far, the battle for the green jersey, that's the race on points for the most consistent daily finisher. That goes on unabated, and the sprint today, the first sprint, which came after 15 miles, was won by Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov, so 6 points in that competition to him. He was led out brilliantly by his teammate Eric Decker, who hung on for second place, thus robbing Laurent Jalabert of the points, because Jalabert finished third. He gets only 2 points, so a 4-point game for Abdou-Japarov at the start of the day. Then they went on to a small climb, the Côte de Nougaret, and that was a small breakaway group of Blanc Brochard, who went over the top ahead of Bo Hamburger, the Danish rider. The King of the Mountains leader, Richard Berenck, he was third, and the 2 breakaways were quickly reeled in. And there hasn't been another attack since. All of the riders are together now, and they're passing through the feeding station here in the town of Foix.
As we head out of town, sunflower fields forever, all bowing their heads as the peloton passes. ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France is presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires. At 59 miles into today's race, we're currently climbing the Côte de Garabay, and once again, Team Oncé is making a difference in this race. They really are in the pink, Phil.
And the Oncé team, always easy to pick out in a Tour de France, because they changed the colours only for this race. They were the pink colours, which is a colour they choose for the Tour to help out the organisation, because of course their strong yellow jerseys will clash with the yellow jersey of the overall lead of the race.
Take note that another team also does that during the Tour de France. In fact, the Mercatone Uno team of Mario Cipollini, they changed also from a predominantly yellow jersey to a pale light blue.
And the polka dot jersey, Just about 3 men from the front. Nearest the camera there of Richard Verrenck, who's now staying in touch. He took a 3rd place over the first climb today, but there was a small breakaway at the time. Laurent Brochard and Bo Hamburger, Castorama and TVM riders. But this time it's going to be pretty easy, I think, as Richard looks over his shoulder, and a cool sprint. No problem at all as he goes over the top. Interesting though, Paul, that behind him was Tony Rominger.
And as soon as they got over the top there, one of the Castorama riders decided now's a good time to try and break clear. The Modestos will have shut off the chase a little bit, so we might just succeed in slipping away on the descent. But Rominger, interestingly enough, was up there in 2nd place.
Now, the long, tortuous descent, and our television motorbike, and this is the shot you're seeing from it right now, is going to have a proper staying away from the riders in this area today, because, quite frankly, it is a very dangerous course now as we go into the heart of the Pyrenees. The roads are narrow, they're much different, the climbs here to the Alps, and the scenery is quite different too. Very much greener down here. There's a lot of rain on this chain of mountains, evidenced by the finishing line awaiting these men. But look at this now, can you believe this? Rominger, who went over the top in 2nd place, is now having a go to see who's paying attention.
Phil, Tony Rominger is in 6th position overall, 8:56 down on Indurain. With this attack, even if he can make up 2 minutes on the leaders, who knows how well he could finish, Paul?
It's an interesting move, but I don't think he'll get too far away, because very soon the Bonestos of Miguel Indurain will come to the front and put on the pressure.
Well, I would imagine so. He's going with some 66 kilometers still to go to the finish. That's about 42, 43 miles. And look at the reaction now as the race starts to crack and the Bonestos get down to the job of hauling in Tony Rominger.
Well, they know that straight away. They recognize the shape and the size of Tony Rominger. They've straight away, without even any mention from Miguel Indurain, put the pressure on, and they're going to chase him down as quickly as they can, because despite the fact that he's way down in the overall standings, he is always a danger man.
So the day is starting perhaps a little early after all for the domestiques of Miguel Indurain, who has put himself about 12 men. You can just see him peeping in at the bottom of our picture. He sent the team up. Rominger has decided that this perhaps is not going to work, but at least he's made Bonesto make the effort.
Phil, a good time to take a quick check of who's wearing what jersey. You mentioned Richard Verrenck, and his mountain climbing abilities have him in the polka dots. Laurent Jalabert has had the green sprinters jersey for the past week now. And of course, Miguel Indurain's yellow jersey identifies him as the overall leader of the Tour de France. Back out on the course at about the 60-mile mark, there is a 3-man breakaway that has left the peloton. Let's get back to the action with Phil Liggett.
And this is Martin Den Bakker of the TVM team, a team which has lost a lot of its riders in this race. They're only left with 5 men. Bo Hamburger was on the attack earlier today. That didn't work, and so Martin Den Bakker has joined this breakaway now. These are the legs of Dante Rezzi. And I think that the TVM team have had a little bit of a plan today to try and break this race up, but nobody has been willing thus far to join them. And now these 3 have got a small gap over the field, around about 46 seconds. And they're heading up towards the second category climb of the day, the Porte de l'Air. And this is quite a difficult climb. It's an average gradient of 7%, and it goes uphill for 7 miles. There's Robin, a teammate of the King of the Mountains leader, Richard Verrenck, who has managed to score a few points on the small climbs today, but will try to be in the fight when they get onto the slopes of Guzet-Neige. And there it's going up ever so slightly. 48 seconds now, the gap for these 3 riders. But they are working well together. That gap should improve for the moment. It all depends how well they settle into the climb on the Porte de l'Air, where the weather, by the way, is at its worst, because there is very low cloud at the top and very heavy rain at the moment. Although here on the top of Guzet-Neige, the low cloud is persisting, but the rain has eased considerably. And all of the chasing being done by the Carrera team. So Miguel Indurain finding friends in strange places today. A little help coming from the boys in white. The reason being, of course, they're hoping that Marco Pantani will finish it all off when they get to the mountains. Now, many of you often ask what sort of gears the riders use on the climbs. Well, men like Pantani, the pure climbers, will use probably a 39 inside chain wheel today, and the cluster at the back will probably go through to a 22 back sprocket. concentration on the men of Banesto, knowing that if they keep their man in that leader's yellow jersey all of the way to Paris, then they will take all of the prize money, because by tradition the man that wins the Tour gives his shirt away. Last year they won the best part of 2.5 million French francs.
Phil, that's not bad for 3 weeks' work of bicycle riding. $196,000 split 8 ways. We'll give you a commercial break to figure out how much that is per man. We're at 76 miles into stage 14. Tony Rominger is still trying to do something with that breakaway he initiated about 5 miles ago. Let's go to Phil.
And just look at this now. Tony Rominger is among the first riders to attack here on this second category climb. And he is at the moment 27 seconds behind 2 leaders, because Dante Retze has been dropped by Jean-Cyril Robin and Martin Den Bakker. But clearly today, Paul, Tony Rominger has decided to come out and see exactly what he can do. He's been joined here by the teammate of Indurain, Gonzalez Arrieta.
Definitely decided that he wants to show himself. He's had a very tough time in this year's Tour de France, and I think he knows that the climbs are not too difficult today. He can use the power that he's got, and he's so far behind Miguel Indurain that Indurain is not going to chase him down dramatically as he would do.
Oh, Paul, he's just going to control the pace. But we've just been told there's an attack at the front of the breakaway group. The man to look out for, Marco Pantani.
And he has flown away. There he is, the third man here, and he never waits for anybody on the slopes. He's going straight past Tony Rominger, who, I wonder who, has just arrived and gone by. This man is such a class above everybody else on the mountains.
And look at that there. Tony Rominger looked across to see if he could just accelerate a little bit to stay with Marco Pantani, but Pantani just dances on the pedals and goes away and opens the gap straight away. This man has got to be, as you said a couple of days ago, the best climber in the world.
And the surprising thing is, Paul, remember what he said about 7 days ago, this Tour de France is not over and I will be on the finish podium in Paris. Well, if he intends to be on the finish podium in Paris, he has to attack early and on every day he is in the mountains to recoup his lost time.
He's already caught the 2 leaders. That were 27 seconds just a few moments ago. He came up to them in the space of 1 kilometer. Straight away, Jean-Cyril Robin from the Festina squad has been dropped, and now Martin Den Bakker has got to try and hold on for as long as he can. But you know, the speed with which Marco Pantani goes uphill, I'm sure we're looking at 14, 15 miles an hour uphill on a slope like this. It's very difficult to stay in contact with.
Paul, Marco Pantani is one of the best climbers to come along in years, certainly the best in the last 10. He's number 1 in a classification for the best young riders, those 25 and under. And after yesterday's fantastic performance, Lance Armstrong jumps into the top 5. He's at number 4 now. At age 23, today's stage marks the longest he has ever stayed in the Tour. Riders' position here, a direct result of where they stand in the Tour overall. Back on the road, things really opening up.
This race all of a sudden has become so much alive. The main field is exploding into little pieces on this climb.
Amazing to know. You know, the last 2 years they've said Miguel Indurain is vulnerable in the mountains, but nobody has dared to attack him. But this year they've realized that, and they've got the courage to go out there and try to do it. It's amazing the pressure that's been put on Indurain, but Tony Rominger now is trying to pull himself back up. You know, this morning Rominger was 8 minutes 56 seconds behind Miguel Indurain in the overall standings, but still Indurain sits back behind his teammates, lets them do the work to limit his losses.
He's waiting till he really does have to use his immense strength. The Banesto boys are going to have a hard day now. The last 2 hours of this race for them is going to be extremely difficult indeed.
But Marco Pantani will make it look easy, Phil. He is so strong for his small size. Phil, I also know you're interested in what's going on back home in the kingdom, more specifically Fife, Scotland. It's the 1995 British Open on ESPN. Defending champion Nick Price joins Jack Nicklaus, Greg Norman, and that amateur Tiger Woods in first and second round coverage that starts Thursday, July 20th at 9 a.m. Eastern, live on ESPN. With 15 miles to go to the finish now, this is Marco Pantani's turf. Nothing but mountain climbing with more than a minute lead on Miguel Indurain.
And so we're heading up towards the summit now of the Col d'Agnes, and this man is still holding on to quite a lead, but chasing him now is the Frenchman who did so well on the climb to Alpe d'Huez, and there he is coming under the kilometre to go and the 25 kilometres from the actual finish line today, and this is Laurent Madouas of the Castorama team. What an improved rider he is in this year's Tour.
Well, he rode an excellent Tour of Italy after he also started his season, his preparation in the Tour du Pont in America. He has come along extremely well, but you know, he made a good move there, and he's starting to close down a little bit on Marco Pantani, but there's still another climb to go.
Well, 45 seconds is the gap at the moment, so you're right, Paul. Madouas is nibbling away, and he's closed the 10 seconds gap to this rider at the moment. And they're adding 3 seconds on here. 48 seconds they're saying on television. We also are hearing what the race referees are saying out on the course, and so we get time checks from 2 directions.
Another piece of information coming from this group at the moment is, in fact, that Bjarne Riis had to just change a bicycle, and his 2 teammates, Bruno Kengialta and Gabriel Colombo, waited for him and are trying to pace him back into this group at the moment. So that is an unfortunate thing for Riis, because he was riding so well before.
And in fact, just off the camera, though, I could see a rider hanging off the back of this group, and it could well have been one of Riis's teammates. Now, a little bit of good news for Miguel Indurain, if he needs any, is that Vincenti Aparicio has rejoined this group after climbing very well on the slope. So he's got a couple of teammates back in that lead group. But this is the man who is blazing the trail today towards Guzet-Neige. He's in some pretty rough weather at the moment, as we climb back up again now on the Col d'Agnes, going back up to almost the same height, hardly any difference at all with that of the Porte de l'Aise, and that's probably why we're back into the rain and low cloud.
Amazing to watch this man pedal on a climb, and you see he really is a typical climber, as the climbers were in the old days of the 50s and 60s. You can see his pedaling style. He rides along for a short while in a small gear, which will be 39, 21, something like that, and then as soon as he slows down, he gets out of the saddle to accelerate and keep his speed up, and that is the advantage that he has over the heavier men, who tend to stay sitting down in the saddle and try and stay at one constant rhythm all the time.
And the main chase group now inside that kilometre as well, but Pantani is going to go over the top of this, the winner of another mountain in the King of the Mountains competition. But it's only 3rd category, where the first 6 riders over the top score points for that polka dot jersey. So Richard Virenque will not be too worried about the escape yet. He's making such a tough fight of it, Paul. I mean, he's not really pulling away at all.
But every time somebody has tried to attack behind him, they've closed the gap initially, they've bridged 15 or 20 seconds, they've started to eat into his lead, and then they've cracked and gone back to the main field with Miguel Indurain. And this man rides constantly all the time. Every time he starts to slow down, he gets out of the saddle, he explodes, he lifts his speed a little bit, and then he'll sit down again and ride for another 400 or 500 meters, just about to go over the top of the Col d'Agnes. He'll take maximum points in the King of the Mountains, but that's not what he's looking for. He's looking for time to move up the overall leaderboard.
And as the clock counting down, the time gap for us as we head up towards the summit here with the main chase group. And still the constant rhythm. And no panic now. I'm not so sure, in fact, for whether Tony Rominger is here, because I haven't caught a glimpse of him.
Well, he was in great difficulty as soon as Miguel Indurain accelerated on that last climb, the Porte de l'Aise. But, you know, he's had an awfully bad time, Tony Rominger, in this year's Tour de France, and I do feel that as some kind of psychological block he has against the Tour de France, or even against Miguel Indurain, because he is a strong rider. He's won the Tour of Spain 3 times. He's won the Tour of Italy, but he just doesn't seem to be able to click in when it comes to the big Tour de France.
And all his victories, of course, have been when Miguel Indurain hasn't taken part, which might well work on him mentally. So a minute gone by now since the passage. 45 seconds they're saying the gap was to Laurent Madouas, so he's running just about half a minute ahead of this group here as Virenque shoots away to take 3rd place over the climb, and that will give him a good score for the King of the Mountains.
Phil Vironk in the polka dot jersey, but in today's email bag, a question sent to us on the ESPN net concerning the yellow jersey. What is its significance and history in the Tour? Well, even though the first Tour was in 1903, it wasn't until 1919 that this symbol was introduced. The Tour organizing newspaper Le Auto, today's L'Equipe, which means team, was printed on yellow paper. A marketing man suggested the jersey, and now its popularity has increased for 76 years. Thanks for the question. It came out of ESPN Net Sports Zone. More mountain climbing coming up in stage 14 when we return.
If you're into computers, get into PC Magazine. Call now and get your next issue of PC Magazine free. Plus, reserve a free CD-ROM bonus. Here's editor Michael Miller to tell you more.
As editor-in-chief of PC Magazine, I see my share of hot and not so hot computer products. The trick is being able to separate the two. I'm here at PC Magazine Labs, where we review and test all kinds of hardware and software that help you know what to buy now, what you should wait for, and what's next.
Call for your free issue of PC Magazine now. Then get 21 more issues, 22 in all, for just $29.97 if you subscribe. Or cancel and owe nothing. Plus, get PC Magazine's Mega Pack CD-ROM free with your paid subscription, loaded with over 100 top programs, plus a demo version of Alpha 5, and much more. Call now.
1-800-641-0202.
The Tour de France continues today at 3 on ESPN.
Marco Pantani is living on the edge. Wet roads, within inches of the cliff, at 55 miles per hour. His whole race is at risk.
It's amazing to watch this man go downhill here. You see, as soon as he gets into a straight, he gets out of the saddle, he accelerates, but he's using all the road that he can to get round these corners. And you know, these corners are very, very slippy. But fortunately, the roads in the Pyrenees have a lot of gravel and a very heavy pavement, so he can grip quite well on these corners. But you see, he goes almost to the edge of the road there.
20 kilometers to go now for Pantani. I know one man who would have loved it today, Paul Greg LeMond. Well, he was a great descender and took many risks.
He did, and that's sure. If he'd been the yellow jersey today, I'm sure he would have tried to get into contact with Marco Pantani on this descent, because he was a good descender and he's been one of the great descenders of the Tour de France. But this man at the front is doing a pretty good job for a non-descender.
The frightening thing when you apply your brakes for these sharp corners, the film of water on the rim of the wheel, it gives you that horrible feeling you actually suddenly accelerate before the brakes actually grip onto the rim. And it always is a little moment for a heart flutter.
Definitely what the riders will do before they come into the corner, they will start to apply their brakes gently for a short period before, just to clear up the water on the rims. Then they realize that it's going to come in and bite at the last minute.
Pantani descending down now. He doesn't descend down a long way. He drops down to about 780 meters, and then he starts the stepping stone climb up to the top of Guzet-Neige. It's in two portions. We climb the small Col de la Trappe, and then a very, very short descent of maybe a kilometer, and then he hits the climb up to the finishing line of Guzet-Neige.
Pantani's taking all the risks necessary on this descent at the moment. One thing you must remember, though, when he goes into the corners, he'll be applying a lot more pressure on his front brake rather than on the rear brake, because if you do lock up the back brake, it really is almost impossible in these conditions to correct. You see there, he's not locking his wheels at all. He's slowing down just to the right speed.
Well, this is a look at that chase group that includes Miguel Indurain. Now they're currently behind Pantani by close to 2 minutes. They're continuing to lose time to a very courageous Pantani, who seems to be affected very little by these conditions.
Great shot here of Pantani getting down into his aerodynamic position. It's a very dangerous thing to do because you lose a lot of control on the bicycle, but because he doesn't have the weight of somebody like Indurain, he uses that position to increase his speed in the straight lines on the descent, I hesitate to add.
Well, he's now 10 miles or 16 kilometers from the finish. Let's go back up a notch. And this is Buenahara on the back, sitting onto this group again, which is spreading across the mountain on the descent. And our cameraman will have to stay at the back of it until we start the climb. and therefore we can't exactly work out where Indurain is, but I'm quite sure somewhere up the road with the head of the charge.
Well, Miguel Indurain will be to the front of this group because he himself is an excellent descender, and he will be taking not too many risks, but the speed that he's going down is causing a lot of difficulties for these riders at the back. This is Buenajora. Just in front of him is another Colombian. That'll be Alvaro Mejia. He's trying to stay in contact, but you see the gaps that are being left, and once they get to the bottom, they may well not be able to close those gaps on the climb.
Well, Paul, as the weather conditions decrease, Marco Pantani's performance increases, gets better. He's leaving the rest of the field in a fog. During the last 2 years of the Tour de France, that man, Miguel Indurain, has been unable to touch that man, Marco Pantani, when he's been in position to win on these mountain climbs.
Now back to the man who's setting the style of the race today, this great climber, Marco Pantani. Remember, he broke clear at the bottom of the Porte de l'Air, and he's been the leader over the top of the mountains ever since. Now he wants to complete a great day by being the first man to the top of Guzet-Neige, and it would be a second stage win for him in this year's Tour de France in the mountains, and then we'd see what sort of time he gains.
Interesting to know that Marco Pantani is one of the few riders who doesn't actually use a heart rate monitor because he doesn't believe in it. He'd rather just ride as hard as he can. He said there's not much point having a heart rate monitor in the mountains. He says because you have to ride over and above your threshold and just give everything you've got.
And this is Aparicio who's setting the pace for Miguel Indurain now. And Melchior Mauri's the rider on the right, and Alex Zula, the man on the left. Also in this group is the third placed overall, Laurent Jalabert, and Bjarne Riis. The man who's missing is Tony Rominger. He's now more than 3 minutes behind.
Every time the road steepens a little bit, Pantani gets out of the saddle, he accelerates, he keeps the pace up. He just realizes he's got to keep his speed up for as long as he can. He sits down in the saddle to rest his thighs just a little bit, and then again changes gear and up again. He's really unbelievable, this man. He goes over the top there of the Col de la Trappe, just a slight descent before then he faces the final climb up to the Guzet-Neige.
But here we have Aparicio, followed by Neil Stevens of Australia, an inspired man indeed today. This is what the ONCE team is like. They inspire one another, and Alex Zula and co are going to really thank again Neil Stevens tonight. But this is the rider who's riding for himself. Earlier down in the valley, Claudio Chiappucci had a flat back tyre. We've not heard from him since. But now we're looking at the group here containing Laurent Jalabert, Richard Brink, Melchior Mauri to our right, Alex Zula, Ivan Gotti on the far side in blue. The only man missing from the royalty today is in fact Tony Rominger.
And Tony Rominger at the moment is 4 minutes and 30 seconds behind Marco Pantani, which puts him almost 2 minutes behind this group of Miguel Indurain. Now Pantani's on the descent. You see he's getting as low as he can on that bicycle, trying to get as aerodynamic. He wants to recuperate a little bit on this final descent before the slopes of Guzet-Neige, but he keeps his speed up all the time. At the moment he's probably touching 35 miles an hour on this descent. Before then he has to change his gears from the big gear he's using now right to the opposite end of the scale. Here's the dangerous corner. He's got to take a very sharp left-hander, and in fact he almost misjudged it. He wasn't expecting that, but safely round. He's got about 500 meters downhill now before he starts the climb.
Well, you can see the rain beginning to build up on the lens there. That means the last and steepest climb will become the most dangerous for Pantani. Marco Pantani, the best young rider on the Tour, who won L'Alpe d'Huez last week, is proving he's the best climber on the Tour as well. Phil, give us the distance to the finish.
The 5-kilometer point to the finishing line, and Marco Pantani being chased here by Laurent Madouas, and Madouas has been chasing him in fact since the previous climb where he attacked on the Col d'Agnès, and it was on that climb where Pantani consolidated his lead. Madouas went over the top there second, 45 seconds back. Richard Virenque bringing over Miguel Indurain and his teammate Aparicio, and the news on that climb was that Tony Rominger had been dropped and was 2 minutes 50 seconds behind. But on the descent, a very, very dangerously wet descent indeed. More problems for the television motorbikes. They crashed in the Alps and they were down again in the Pyrenees. But now we are with the chase group here on the final climb of the day, and once again we're sorry about the picture breakup, but it is the atmospherics in the Pyrenees. They're climbing up towards again more fog, as Aparicio, who rejoined this group after a bit of a chase, is now helping out Miguel Indurain. Just 2 riders ahead of the yellow jersey on the climb.
Well, for the moment the time is not being pulled back on Marco Pantani. He's actually increasing his lead as he comes up the climb of Guzet-Neige. He's 3 minutes ahead of the yellow jersey group of Miguel Indurain at the moment, and still in the middle there is Laurent Madouas, a Frenchman from the Castorama team, at 1 minute 25. He's doing a superb ride, but he isn't getting anywhere near this man.
Well, Pantani went for a long one today. He was seeking a big time gain. Do you think, Paulie, would he see a 2 minute 30 gain perhaps as a good time gain?
He would be happy. I think it's a lot more than he would have gained if he'd waited until the bottom of the Guzet-Neige climb to launch his attack. If he'd waited till here, he may well have been able to pull 1 minute out of the rest of the group, but attacking so far from the finish, that is why he's able to open his lead up. But you know, I'm sure he will do it again in a couple of days' time when we go into the big mountains, because that really is his terrain once we go into the high Pyrenees, where we start looking at 2,000 meters.
The riders having a full rest day tomorrow, no travel at all. They stay here in the Pyrenees. They'll all be out on the bikes, of course. And then we have a real tough day up to Cotteret, which is where Miguel Indurain once won a road race stage of the Tour de France. Now, Pantani under the 4 kilometers to go banner. Inspiration coming from the crowd. But because the road up to Guzet-Neige was closed for quite a long time, the crowd, in fact, not so thick on Guzet-Neige. Nothing like we would have expected.
It's a difficult area to get to because there's not so many roads, access roads into the Pyrenees, and the tough climbs that are around here are extremely small. But this is the man of today for Miguel Indurain, Vicente Aparicio. He's done an excellent job. He's suffered so much, but these men believe so much in their leader, Miguel Indurain, that they will fight and recover and come back into the group just so that they can help him for every last little bit of energy they have on that day.
And although it seemed on the Port de l'Air that Indurain was going to be in for a really tough session today, he's calmed the whole thing down, and it's even an added bonus because they've seen Tony Rominger crack wide open and fall away from this group today. Bjarne Riis is still there. There he is in the red jersey, champion of Denmark. They're under the 5 kilometer to go banner. Richard Virenque is here, Laurent Brochard. And there's Claudio Chiappucci, so he recovered well from that punctured back wheel. Paolo Lanfranchi is the rider from Brasilia.
He's been well to the front over the last couple of days in these mountains, and there's another Marco Pantani supporter letting him know what the gap is, and it is in fact increasing dramatically. 1 minute and 47 seconds, and Bjarne Riis in fact is attacking again from the yellow jersey group.
Well, our camera's staying with the French rider, but news reaching our ears that Bjarne Riis has attacked from that Indurain group, and now we're at the back of that group, and let's have a look. Yes, somebody is certainly gone. Indurain again continues to make the tempo at the front as our cameraman scampers up to see Bjarne Riis on the attack here on the climb of Guzet-Neige.
Well, Bjarne Riis here obviously not attacking Miguel Indurain. What he wants to do is put Laurent Jalabert into difficulty. He saw that Jalabert was dropped on the last climb there, and he may well have changed his bicycle to get a lighter bicycle to go into this final climb, you know, so that he could get away from Laurent Jalabert and move back up into 3rd place in the overall standings. He has to get 2.5 minutes though in the overall standings today if he can jump up to 3rd place.
Well, even a slight reduction of the gap and finish it off in the next couple of days perhaps, but look at that acceleration. There's been no reaction whatsoever. Indurain isn't going to start the reaction. Why should he? Because after all, he's 6 minutes ahead of Bjarne Riis, and we're looking at about 3.5 kilometers to the end of this day of racing.
Phil, Marco Pantani's climb is the story of today's race. The others in the Michelin race summary, well, 129 riders took the start for their first day in the Pyrenees. The field stayed together until the mountains in the last 40 miles. Tony Rominger unleashed the first serious attacks, but wasn't able to escape the pressure of Miguel Indurain and the Banesto team. Marco Pantani seemed to have no trouble with that pressure, has attacked, and now 3 miles from the finish, he is 2.5 minutes ahead of the yellow jersey. Now, that should be enough for Marco to win if he can hang on. Back with his finish in just a moment. 1 mile to go from Marco Pantani on the climb up Guzet-Neige, trying to repeat what he did the other day on L'Alpe d'Huez.
Back in the mountains, this man has come into his own once again. He's going to steal a little bit of time today. He's being chased still by Laurent Madouas, and then we go back to the people who are racing for third place, led of course by the man in yellow on his 31st birthday, Miguel Indurain. Just behind him we have Alex Zula, and now trying to get on, I think it's Ivan Gotti now. Don't forget that Ivan Gotti started today at just 1 second behind Tony Rominger. Well, those gaps will be minutes tonight because Rominger has been dropped from this group.
Another man who's been dropped from this group as well is Melchior Mauri. He may well have sore legs after their effort yesterday. Let's not forget they were really at the front of the race for an awful long time, and it looks now as if Indurain has decided it's about time to get rid of the dirty washing because he's putting the pressure on, and again, as he did on the last climb, he's blowing everybody away.
But don't forget, and we're not too sure where he is, but somewhere just ahead of Indurain is the champion of Denmark, Bjarne Riis, and that probably is why Indurain has now decided to come after him. So Pantani continues to blaze his own trail up the mountain, chased by Laurent Madouas, then by Bjarne Riis, and then by Miguel. And Miguel still has Azula, the shadow, and he's hanging on once more to the Spaniard. This is Pantani, tapping out the rhythm for the last time today as he looks for now the kite in the sky that will put him in the final kilometre.
He's done a superb job over these last two climbs. Every time he feels that his speed is slowing down a little bit, he gets out of the saddle to use the gears as best as he can. He puts the bicycle from side to side, giving every little bit out of his body, from his arms, from his legs, from his back, the last little bit of energy just to push him up this mountain.
Jean-Marie Leblanc, a brave man in his shirt sleeves, standing through the roof of the car there, witnessing one of the finest exhibitions of climbing we've seen for a long time. This is the chase behind, very briefly, but the picture's breaking up. Now the crowd well under control, and I must say there is quite a large crowd here now. They've come out of the woods and out of their tents. They've had a wet night, those that have stayed up here, but they're seeing a great performance again by Marco Pantani. Slips it up just one little sprocket there to try and continue at the pace. There's Indurain Zula, and they've caught Bjarne Riis. There he is, and he's now just going to hang on. So we've got the first, second and fourth place here, and the sixth place, because Gotte, number 17 on the left, he will now be up to sixth place in the Tour de France. He'll have gone over Tony Rominger. 2 kilometers to go for this group.
And only two men up in front of them on the road. That is Marco Pantani and Laurent Madouas, who's trying to hold on to second place on the stage, and hopefully, if he can, moving a little higher in the overall standings, because he started in 13th behind Richard Virenque and Claudio Chiappucci. But these four men here are the men we've seen so much together in the toughest parts of the Tour de France.
Laurent Madouas on the final hairpin bends of the climb of Guzet-Neige, but he's still not making any progress at all on Marco Pantani, and he may well only just hang on by the chase back being caused by Miguel Indurain. The important thing is that Bjarne Riis is also in that chase group, and Laurent Jalabert isn't, and so Riis closing in on the third place overall in this race today. And that's the sight he wanted to see. 1 kilometer to go for Marco Pantani. Now it gets a little bit easier here, and then it climbs up to the finishing line. We're heading up now to the corner where Robert Miller went the wrong way a few years ago and lost the stage of the Tour de France because of it.
One thing we do have to say, though, that even if Marco Pantani does go the wrong way, he's got enough time in hand to come back on himself and still win the stage.
Yes, so that time with Robert, it was a 3-man sprint with Philippe Bouvatier, Massimo Girotto and Miller. Now this time it is just one man and himself, Marco Pantani. Remember at Alpe d'Huez, of course, he almost went into where they send the cars to park just before the finishing line, but he turned round and went straight up to the finish at Alpe d'Huez. Very similar thing could happen here, to sharp left into the finish.
Well, I have to admit, we were so lucky in having this man at the Tour de France. He was nearly robbed of his start here, but it's so good to have him.
Yes, an injured knee which kept him out of his home tour, the Tour of Italy. It's meant he's come to the Tour de France quite fresh. He started below form for sure, and he said he wasn't his old magic self, but he's certainly made amends now. He came good in the Alps, and it looks as though he's going to be even better in the Pyrenees. There are still 2 more stages in the Pyrenees to come after the day off tomorrow. The final gear change for Marco Pantone, and he's made the right turn as well. Now he can line up for the finish, and he can collect his second stage in the mountains. He won in the Alps on the revered Alpe d'Huez, and now he will win at Guzet-Neige. A long day in the saddle, almost 4.5 hours, and Pantani still looking so good as he spins clear. There'll be good time gains for him today as well, as he comes up through the Merck to the line to the applause of a very appreciative crowd.
You know, Phil, everyone talks about how well Indurain breathes his way up the mountain, but for his size, Marco Pantani really is a cardiovascular monster. Indurain's finish is coming up. Marco Pantani has already won the stage, but the Frenchman Laurent Madois having the ride of his life. Can he hold off the man in the yellow jersey, Miguel Indurain? Phil?
Poor old Laurent Madois, he rode so well and did so much, but he's hit the wall just before the top. It's not all over yet. He might hang on because the road gets a little bit easier before they climb up to the line.
I don't think he's going to hold on today, but he will be happy, I think, by the fact that he's almost certainly going to move up in the overall standings. He went to the Tour of Italy with a hope of finishing in the top 10. He didn't do that. He finished 11th, but this ride today may well push him up into the top 10 in the Tour de France.
So France are finding themselves another big name in the sport here, as well as Lange Jalabert. A little bit of a downhill before they climb up to the line, but you can see by the face of Madois that he really is just hoping that line comes pretty quickly. 400 meters to go. He should hang on now, surely, although it's a pretty hard 400 meters.
Well, he's suffering 350 meters to go. You know, he may well just hold on to that second place, which he was hoping for. He was hoping to get up into contact with Marco Pantani, but nobody was going to touch that Italian today. He flew up the mountains. Every time the road went uphill, he was really lifting the pace.
And the last look over his shoulder, maybe just chance for a little smile, Laurent, because you're going to hold them off, I think. And there they are. Goodness me, Indurain is after him, so too is Bjorn. And on the wheel of Indurain, of course, Indurain went very wide there. Ivan Gotti is here at the back of this group now. The big man grits his teeth, 31 years of age. Out of the Merck comes Laurent Madois. The clock continues to count on. They've made, Pantani's made good time gains, but Indurain will chase everything. He's trying to get Madois just before the line, and look at this now. Madois has got nothing left at all, but he's going to get it. Oh, just 2 minutes 30, and not 2 seconds has gone by before Indurain snatches third place, followed by Zula, Gotti and Rees in that order. And this is the race now for 7th place, the King of the Mountains, Richard Virenque, bringing up Laurent Jalabert on his wheel here. So Rees hasn't made quite too much gain. El Diablo, Claudio Chiappucci is in this group as they come up towards the line. Lanfranchi is here too for the Brescia team. But more points, no, Laurent Jalabert is going to take on the King of the Mountains. 2 Frenchmen fighting out for the lower places on the mountain today. But Jalabert wants to save time. He gets it, followed by Virenque and Chiappucci, Lanfranchi.
Fantastic story for Marco Pantani. Keep your hat on and keep that bald head dry there, Marco. Great day. Not a bad day for Laurent Madois. When he gets back to the hotel tonight, he can tell his team he beat Miguel Indurain, the birthday boy, in the yellow jersey. Alex Zula, the man who said this tour is not over, he was 4th today, right alongside 2 and 3. Tony Rominger came in 17th. Lance Armstrong and Frankie Andreo came in with the Gruppetto. The boys who decided that they had been dropped, they all wanted to finish together. Overall, the big story today is that Marco Pantani took a ton of time out of the leaders. Only 10 minutes and 7 seconds now behind Miguel Indurain in 7th position. Lance Armstrong, 34th. Overall, great day yesterday, held back today. Day off tomorrow, reloads for Tuesday.
I should be able to recover a little better for the last 4 or 5 stages there. I'm super motivated. I mean, I really felt like yesterday was my day, and I was beat, so. But I don't want to leave it like that. I mean, I have something else to say, I think.
For his 31st birthday, Miguel Indurain got a brand new yellow shirt to add to the collection. And a birthday cake as well. Feliz cumpleaños. The leader of the 1995 Tour de France is Miguel Indurain. The world's greatest cycling event has now traveled 1,603 miles with 656 still to go. Be sure to join us when we wrap up the first 2 weeks of the tour tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN, 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Yeah, Marco. For Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen and our entire Tour de France team, I'm Adrian Karsten. ESPN's coverage of the 1995.
So today the Tour wants to take some time off. Well, go ahead. I'm ready for the Pyrenees. I figure at this rate I could make the top of the Col de whatever by July of '96.
Today we're in Toulouse in the sunny south of France as the riders take a deep breath and then attack the toughest days of all. Hello everyone, I'm Adrian Karsten welcoming you to ESPN's exclusive coverage of the 1995 Tour de France presented by Michelin. You know, today is the traditional day off in the Tour, the day off between the Alps and the Pyrenees. And after setting a record pace, averaging over 100 miles a day, believe it or not, this is exactly what the cyclists are doing. They're out riding their bikes because they don't want to get out of the groove. Why? For the first time in 5 years, there are still some riders that believe Indurain is beatable. Now, granted, the next couple of days we go into the Pyrenees and climb those mountains. This is real Indurain terrain. But there's talk among the teams that if he has a weakness, it is that he fades late in these stages. So we'll have to see what happens. They'll be on the attack, an attitude and approach they've had ever since the early mountain stages that began back in La Plana. The signature stages of the Tour de France. The riders came in after a day off that followed the individual time trial. That event Miguel Indurain has dominated since his win streak began back in '91. But the riders showed no respect for that record. Alex Zula challenged the champion at the 62-mile mark of stage 9. Indurain launched his own solo chase, trying to protect his 2.5-minute overall lead. But Zula had built up too much, too fast, too early. He finished 2 minutes ahead of Indurain, serving notice that anything was possible. Wednesday, stage 10. Russian rookie Yevgeny Berzin, expected to be a threat to Indurain, fell to fever and fatigue. He came close to wearing yellow. Not much consolation at a time like this. In this tour, if there's one mountain man, it's Marco Pantani.
This man is now going up the mountain in true glory on Alpe d'Huez, where climbers have their moment of pleasure, and this rider is so nice to watch.
It's unbelievable. You see, he keeps that gear down all the time. Every time he goes into the corner, he accelerates quickly. He gets out of the saddle and sits down again, gets into his rhythm. Now all he has to do is time trial to the finish, and he really has got an incredible position.
Indurain had to react to this attack from the front and from behind. Alex Zula right on his wheel. Then a coronation. King of the mountains.
The flags are waving up here by the finishing line, and Marco Pantani, the finest climber currently racing the circuit in the world of professional cycling, has now proved it to everybody. This man is a beautiful climber, and he's proved it on the best mountain of the Tour.
Stage 11, with a lot of the leaders picking the Union pace, Hernan Buenajora and Max Chiandri decided to strike out on their own. At the finish, Chiandri found a little bit left to win his first ever stage in the Tour. Friday, Bastille Day, memories of Frenchmen fighting for independence. Well, Team Once refreshed that memory. Their man Laurent Jalabert in green attacked Indurain's yellow. But Miguel was really cool, a master at controlling the pace. He just hung tough in pursuit. But Jalabert, close to his home, in front of his family, decided this was his time to take control. He built up a 12-minute lead.
And that is the attack we expected. It looks to me as though Podenzano, no, it's the Gavies rider, but Taro has gone after him. So look at this, he sat on the back ever since the break started. Now he's chasing Jalabert.
And he's having a great deal of difficulty getting to the wheel of Laurent Jalabert, but the other riders have just been blown away by the attack of Laurent Jalabert. He knew this was his climb, and I feel fairly sure that he's been to check it out beforehand, because he too rode the midi-leave, as did Miguel Indurain. He has chance now to look over his shoulder, and he sees that Botaro cannot get into contention. He can't close the gap on flying Laurent Jalabert.
Pantani, Zula, Indurain himself tried to recover whatever time possible, but Jalabert was not about to lose the Tour's Chapter 12, a storybook ending.
It'll be a moment of glory for Laurent Jalabert. This has been a magical Tour de France for him. He's had the yellow, he's got the green, and now he's got the stage win. Up goes the zip now. He's going to make it look as though he hasn't tried all day. What a great race it's been for him, because he's been in the lead for most of the day today. He's enjoying this now. Who cares about a few seconds, because this will be remembered forever. Laurent Jalabert crossing the line and salutes the crowd.
So a Frenchman wins this battle, but the war goes on. What Daddy did on his day off. This is Papa Johan Museo, who had his hands full this morning, loading up the family camper for a summer tour around France.
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France is presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
The city of Toulouse, also known as Ville Rouge, the Red City. And if you had a day off to see the sights in the south of France, basically perfect. Now, back home, Americans embrace overnight sports sensations, which is why they fell in love with Lance Armstrong 2 years ago. But his long list of first evers and youngest evers has created some unrealistic expectations. Indurain may only be 8 years his senior, but light years his superior.
I mean, they expect Lance Armstrong to be Miguel Indurain when they don't realize that Miguel is 31. This is his 11th tour. His first two he never finished. He was in the bottom half of the Tour de France for a long time, and now he's only blossomed into what he is. And people don't realize that at the third tour and at 23 years old, they expect you to be with Miguel Indurain all the time, and you just can't do that in a race like this. This is a man's race, and it's hard for a kid to compete.
On Saturday, Lance showed us he's learning how to win. He led the peloton for 125 miles. And in every one of those miles, he told us he believed he would win. The quartet of leaders became a one-on-one battle with Sergei Uchikov.
Lance Armstrong straight on him here, and that's a good move, and he looks cool.
And in fact, behind race radio telling me that in fact the two riders, Buenahora and Kengielta, are watching each other. They don't want to make the move first, and these two riders have got a great lead.
Uchikov is along with Lance Armstrong. They really have got to keep going together now, because they'll dive off this mountain. Before you know it, they'll be in the streets of Rebel.
Well, I think you said that because Lance Armstrong really is reveling in the glory at the moment. He's so happy to be at the front of the Tour de France. He had a very hard time in the mountains. He tried to stay with the leaders. He tried to get across to Alex Zula, but at the moment, this really is his terrain. When this man feels he can get a victory, he just wants to go for it.
And Armstrong now in the front and doesn't want to be there, so he now looks over to Uchikov to see if he'll take the lead.
He's forced Uchikov into the first position on the road. There's the left-hander. It won't be very long now before they can see at the end of this big long straightaway the Coca-Cola banner across, which signifies the end of the stage.
And it's going to be about now where Sergei Uchikov realizes he made a mess of that. He shouldn't have gone round the corner into the lead, because Lance has him where he wants him now, and he's not going to come by him again until he goes for the gears and gives him just about all the speed he has left in those legs after what has been a tremendously long day in the saddle for all of the breakaway. Uchikov is going to ride close to the barriers on the left, so Armstrong must come over on his right shoulder, give him only one way. Armstrong now begins to make his move. Uchikov goes immediately, but goes right to the centre of the road. Armstrong holding the back wheel of Uchikov. Very shortly Armstrong is going to have to kick, but I don't think he's got it. Uchikov has everything. Uchikov takes it on the line.
As far as I'm concerned, I mean, I got last place. There was two guys there, and I was second, so I'm bitter, very disappointed, but like I said, I'm trying to turn it into something positive. So I think that this anger and this disappointment is gonna help me to recover. I mean, I'm a fighter. You know, I have to keep fighting.
Lance, keep fighting and you'll become the next American cycling hero. The first one since this man, now rolling along on 4 wheels, who used to be more recognizable on 2. American Greg LeMond provided the greatest comeback in the history of this sport. In 1989, 2 years after being shot while hunting, he won the Tour de France by the smallest margin ever. The unforgettable memories on the Champs-Élysées were almost a dream, unlike the harsh reality of a disease that eventually shortened his career.
Throughout my career, I have had some obstacles to overcome, but I'm now confronting one that I'm not able to surmount. I have been diagnosed with a muscular disorder called mitochondrial myopathy. This condition does not allow me to perform at the level I must to compete in cycling. Therefore, today I must announce my retirement from cycling.
So what's left for LeMond? In part, the reflection on a career that didn't end the way it should have.
I'm leaving the sport unsatisfied, and I'd missed it for the last 3 years. I missed being in that great a shape, being in the front, being competitive, being there to counterattack. I mean, there's nothing better than being at your best in the Tour de France. And it's a game for 3 weeks that lasts. It's like a soap opera, and you get to be the main actor. That's fun, you know.
Greg, you don't have to tell us it's fun. We had just as much fun watching you. By the way, if you're ever on a bike hike through Minnetonka, Minnesota, stop in at the Tour Cafe. It's the one with the signature yellow awnings. The gap between the first 2 weeks and 14 stages of the Tour. Now we need to take another look at yesterday's individual effort that has fans mentioning Marco Pantani as a potential Tour champion. He doesn't even wear the polka dot jersey, but everyone knows he's the best billy goat here.
There he is, the third man here, and he never waits for anybody on the slopes. He's going straight past Tony Rominger, who I wonder who has just arrived and gone by. This man is such a class above everybody else on the mountains.
And look at that there. Tony Rominger looked across to see if he could just accelerate a little bit to stay with Marco Pantani, but Pantani just dances on the pedals and goes away and opens the gap straight away. This man has got to be, as you said a couple of days ago, the best climber in the world.
Marco Pantani is a much different rider than Miguel Indurain. Yesterday, Miguel kept his composure and let his teammates work him into the mountains. Pantani goes downhill with his own wild style, hanging it out and hanging on.
Great shot here of Pantani getting down into his aerodynamic position. It's a very dangerous thing to do because you lose a lot of control on the bicycle, but because he doesn't have the weight of somebody like Indurain, he uses that position to increase his speed in the straight lines on the descent.
Pantani picked up more than a minute on that descent. So on the next climb, Indurain had no choice. Chase.
And Indurain's attacking here now. He's going to rip this field apart. He's going to have to go after Marco Pantani. Those who could go should go now.
Definitely, that's what he does. He uses his teammates up until the very last minute. When there aren't any left with him, he puts down the hammer himself. And at the moment, there's one man just sticking right into the slipstream of Miguel Indurain, and that's Alex Zula. Just a little bit further back is Richard Virenque trying to stay in contact there, but he's having an awful hard time.
Having an easy time of it, Marco Pantani.
He won in the Alps on the revered Alpe d'Huez, and now he will win at Guzet-Neige. A long day in the saddle, almost 4.5 hours, and Pantani still looking so good as he sprints clear. There'll be good time gains for him today as well, as he comes up through the murk to the line to the applause of a very appreciative crowd.
After 100 mountain miles in one day, that's the Tour de France. Now, here's the Michelin race summary. With 129 riders left, here's where they stand overall. Miguel Indurain is leading in the yellow jersey, but in this last week, he's been attacked by Zula in second, Jalabert in third, Rees in fourth, Pantani in seventh, and climbing, American Lance Armstrong 34th, Frankie Andreo 93rd. Now, talk about having your cake and eating it, too. At age 31, on your birthday, leading the Tour in the mountains close to home, With the contenders close going into the last week, Miguel, what are your thoughts?
I'm in great condition. It's just that my rivals have concentrated on improving their time trialing, so my lead is not quite as large as in past years.
Well, birthday cake may be about the only thing big Bjarne Riis didn't eat this morning. Look at him. In truth, these riders really have to be careful not to eat too much on their day off. Well, by Thursday, the Eiffel Tower begins to appear on the horizon. But before our coverage of Stage 16, ESPN will be in Fife, Scotland for the first round of the 1995 British Open. Defending champion Nick Price joins Jack Nicklaus, John Daly, Greg Norman, and amateur Tiger Woods in live first-round coverage Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern. We'll be back in a moment. Learning to Speak French 101. Class is in session. Today's teachers from Credit Lyonnais, Stéphane and Alvain. Ladies, where is the start?
Où est le départ?
Où est le départ? These lessons are going to be okay. Today, French lesson number 2 with Stéphane, the professor. Today, we're working on proper pronunciation. See how we do here. Des toutes les couleurs.
De toutes les couleurs. That means all the colors. You'd better try this one.
Ah, the comics. Something is a little more speed. Calvin and Hobbes, actually. I've decided not to take these French lessons too fast. We're still basically at the beginning. Alvain, in French, how do I say Tour de France?
Tour de France.
Tour de France.
Génial. I give you an A for today.
Aren't you kind?
Think about this.
This is good. Now, granted, I'm a guy who likes to get his 3 squares a day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But you can't get what you want to eat here in France if you don't know what you're asking for. Stéphane, what am I asking for?
Le petit déjeuner, le déjeuner et le dîner.
Les Alvain, how about just some soup du jour?
Le soup du jour. Le potage du jour.
It's just going to be easier to go on a diet. Well, only after 1 week of French lessons, the professors feel I'm good to graduate. Here comes the report card. Now, very well done. Je sais ce que ressent Indurain. Now I know how Indurain feels. There you have it. Well, I've also learned a few lessons in covering the tour from Phil Liggett. Now, if they gave a yellow jersey for professional play-by-play, Phil would have been on the podium for the last 23 years. Our color analyst Paul Sherwen has as much respect for him as anyone.
Well, it's good fun because I've known Phil for nearly 20 years myself, because he saw my racing career when I rode the Tour de France, and we've worked together for 10 years, and I think the fact that we have a very similar kind of humour, we're both from the same area in the north of England, and it's a rapid humour, it's a quick humour, and I think we get on very well together, and I think that comes across in the commentary. You can see it's a little bit disorganised, the area where we commentate from here. Well, in a stage finish in Blagnac, all the television went down. There was nothing, no pictures, nothing at all. Phil picked up the phone to London. We were going live. I was on the race radio trying to explain to him what was happening, and he commentated on the whole race without actually having any pictures, and it was almost perfect.
Almost perfect, but no one comes any closer. On this day off, Phil and I took a little time to talk ourselves without our headsets.
Well, any event that covers 2,500 miles in 3 weeks, you got to take a break. And Phil and I figured the guys calling the race certainly should be no exception. Phil, you're calling your 23rd Tour de France. There's a particular ring to that. What has this event become over 3 decades' time? Everyone's talking about the pace this year. Indurain's potential 5th consecutive. What is this event, in your opinion?
Well, what it's become is the fastest and the biggest travelling circus in the world of sport. But to the riders, it's become their most important event of any season. The pressure now for them to succeed is placed on them by sponsors. If they win a stage of this year's Tour de France, they can virtually take the rest of the year off, because you only remember the man who wins a stage of the Tour de France, and none of the other races he may win. But over the years, Adrian, it's become a happy family, yes, but I mean, we've gone up in that family from 1,500 people back in 1973 to nearly 4,000 people now, and it's very commercial now. This race makes a profit, and as you see, the riders push the pace a lot now. In the old days, they used to ride along talking. You never see that anymore.
The other night, we're sitting outside of a restaurant having dinner as the sun goes down. There's this little boy in his pajamas right before his bedtime, racing up and down the avenue on his bicycle. Is that the passion for this sport that we miss in the United States? We don't endear it like people do here?
Of course, absolutely, because the bicycle came before the automobile, and indeed many of the roads now to the Pyrenees were first used by the riders in the Tour de France. And this is a well-chronicled event. The history is well written, and therefore everybody knows the background of this great race. And you know, while that goes on, everybody's going to feel the inner passion for it. And if you're a Frenchman, a Dutchman, or a Belgian, you're going to love this sport.
The question sounds cliche. I'm sure you've heard it before. Greatest thing you've seen in 23 years of the Tour?
Well, the worst thing I've seen was when the Basque separatists blew the car up in San Sebastian. And we had to find a new car next morning, but we shoveled that one back onto the back of a lorry. But the greatest moment that I've ever had in a Tour de France was, of course, Greg LeMond's comeback. But after that, in 1989, when he had the 8-second margin. That particular day, the time trial, I openly admit, I was crying as I was calling the result, because it was such a happy moment and a sad moment. LeMond had pulled the race out of the bag under such great circumstance. Laurent Fignon, who lives in Paris, had lost the Tour by 8 seconds. I felt happy and I felt sorry. And I said to Paul Sherwen at the time, I said, Paul, we should announce our retirements today. We'll never, ever commentate like that again.
Something you haven't seen that you still hope to before you're all done?
Again, no doubt, because I witnessed the first English-speaking winner in Greg LeMond. I then had the pleasure of commentating on Stephen Roach, who was nearer home, the Irishman, in 1987. And what I want now, of course, is a British rider to win the Tour. Goodness me, Tommy Simpson died trying to win this Tour back in 1967. Now we have Chris Boardman, and he left the Tour after only 2 miles this year. But that boy has class, and I think in the next 2 or 3 years, he could be a winner of the Tour de France.
Phil, I think your passion for the sport comes through. It is fun, honestly, listening to you call this race. The unfortunate part about it is that now we got to get back on the course.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time. All right.
And back on the course we will be tomorrow for stage 15, potentially the toughest of the Tour. Back here to Toulouse in a moment. Which one of these picture postcards should I send to myself? Well, whatever. We've been getting a lot of cards and letters from a lot of you, more the computer variety, on ESPN Net Sports Zone. We just looked at one from California. Question, who took second in last year's 94 Tour? Well, that was Piotr Ugromov of Team Gavis. He's not here this year because he broke his collarbone while training for the Tour of Switzerland. However, his teammate, Bjarne Riis, 4th overall, probably one of the biggest surprises of the 95 Tour. Saturday, stage 20, the final individual time trial. The clock is all that counts. Whoever is left in the Tour de France will have to keep their eyes focused on the 29 miles of road ahead to the finish line. Now, Miguel Indurain has been beaten in the final time trial the last 2 years in a row. Something for the Tour's contenders to keep in mind. They'll have to give all they have left, probably a little more. The final individual time trial. We're counting down. That's Saturday, stage 20, the day before the Tour ends, but perhaps one of the most important of the 95 Tour. You'll see it on ESPN early Sunday morning at 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So the leader of the 1995 Tour de France is Miguel Indurain. The world's greatest cycling event has traveled 1,603 miles with 656 still to go. Be sure to join us tomorrow for stage 15 when the Tour resumes in Saint-Orens and ends in Cauterets. Coverage begins on ESPN at 3 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. on ESPN2.
Well, there you have it. Or voila, as they say here in France. See, you thought I was distracted during those French lessons, huh? All right, in 24 hours, the toughest day of all, and it's going to take me at least that long to get to the starting line. See ya. I got to get a side basket, some streamers for my handlebars, though. You know, the complete look.
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France has been presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
has retired a number with one of the most moving gestures ever witnessed in cycling. Fabio Casartelli's life may be over, but today, just watch how his memory brings this tour back to life. Today, this tailgate party picks up and heads down the road to Bordeaux, leaving behind the mountains, a lot of miles, and even more memories. Hello, everyone. With Phil Liggett, I'm Adrian Karsten, welcoming you to ESPN's exclusive coverage of the 1995 Tour de France presented by Michelin. You know, when the riders reach this level in their profession, one day can make their career. Well, Phil, yesterday we saw these guys sacrifice themselves and a chance to win a stage for a friend and a life that was lost.
Yes, what we saw yesterday was a peloton, a big pack of great athletes who had a very big heart. I hope we never see that again, of course, but yesterday they did it just right, I think.
It was a huge sacrifice, both mentally and physically, and after yesterday's memorial pace, these guys are anxious to jump back in the saddle and crank up the speed, but it's going to be tough. 150 miles at 100 degrees.
At 100 degrees, and there is in fact quite a strong wind blowing, but we're now going to sea level, the domain of the sprinters, the men who haven't enjoyed the past few days in the Tour de France. They hate the mountains. They'll be sharpening their legs this morning, and I think we might see a great race.
Today will be another challenge, stage 17, after yesterday's tribute to Fabio Casartelli. Yesterday morning in the city of Tarbes. Casartelli teammate Lance Armstrong, coach Jim Akowitz, and Frankie Andreu. The peloton rode but did not race, offering the stage to the memory of Casartelli.
The Tour de France, which has seen so many great battles since it was first brought to the roads of France in 1903, is now showing us all its other side.
And over these last few days, you know, Lance Armstrong has really experienced the emotions of the Tour de France. He knew what winning was all about when he won in 1993 in Verdun. He knew what losing was all about when he lost a couple of days ago in Revel, when he was sure that he was going to take that stage victory. And then today, he knows something that I don't think any of us can ever experience on the roads of the Tour de France.
They now fan out across the road, and the riders holding themselves off at a respectful distance. To an applause the Tour de France has never known before. The Motorola team remember Fabio Casartelli.
You know, yesterday I really do believe that the riders of the Tour de France paid the highest tribute that they could to their departed friend Fabio Casartelli. But here in the relative calm of the start area, it's a lot cooler, but the atmosphere has changed. On the road to Bordeaux, it's normally the sprinters we see riding at the front, fighting for victory. But today I think the race will be different, because the riders of the Tour de France today would like to honor the race.
A swatch of black cloth tied to Fabio's bike. His legacy tied to this sport. His teammates can finally talk about it.
Yesterday was super hard. I mean, on the start line, first 10, 15 kilometers of the race, everybody was just, really broken up, crying, hard to ride. Super emotional. And then it was a super show of respect, and the race was, the whole day was in honor of Fabio, and everybody rode slow, which was, it was nice. And then they allowed the Motorola team to go in the front and cross the line altogether, and then we decided not to go to the podium because that's where we want Fabio, so like kind of the missing rider. And the hard part is just it's going to be super hard when we get to Paris too, him not being there in Paris, when we have to do that victory lap, and we have that empty slot. And so, but yesterday the beginning was the hardest thing, for sure. It was all night, every night. It's been bad. It's not a fun tour anymore. It was never fun in the beginning either, but it's not, you're not so much looking forward to finishing, you're not so much looking forward to getting to Paris, you're not so much looking forward to you just kind of want to get away from everything now.
Motorola's team colors aren't just red, white, and blue anymore. All of the cyclists agreed on a show of solidarity, but a few riders felt that the tribute should have been handled differently. In third place overall, Bjarne Riis.
I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who thinks so, but I think it was a mistake we did yesterday, because first of all, the day was too long for us, for everybody. It was a very hard day, because to ride 8 hours, think the whole day of this poor guy, it was very bad. I think we shouldn't have started or just have done 100 kilometers, then that's it. Or we should have done the stage normal, because I think the best for everybody is to, it's hard to say, but I think it's best to leave it behind as quick as possible.
Another rider who basically agreed with Riis, Marco Pantani, an old friend of Casartelli, suggested that they raced yesterday and ride a memorial pace today during the actual hours of the funeral. So with his memory in mind, the peloton begins a new stage of their tour today, applauded for their gesture on Wednesday. Stage 17 today, from Pau to Bordeaux. Yep, that Bordeaux. Wine country. 153 miles, includes 3 bonus sprints, which now become the highlight again because we'll run out of mountains to climb today. The most exciting sprint will be at the finish. The word is that Miguel Indurain initiated yesterday's tribute in the peloton. Class. There was very little talking all along the course yesterday, so this morning Armstrong opened up a bit.
I can't sit here and tell you that I was his best friend, or that I knew him like I know Frankie or like I know Sean, but I can tell you that what I knew I really liked, and he was a good guy, and he was going to be a part of this program. And he was not only our friend or our teammate, he was our brother, he was our somebody we confide. I mean, he was just a great guy, so it's very difficult. Yesterday was certainly the hardest day of my career.
A young career that may improve in part because of hardship on the 1995 Tour de France.
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France is presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
Guess what we saw today? A sign pointing to Paris. The Tour has less than 4 days and 400 miles to go. Well, mile 36 in today's stage flew by as Laurent Jalabert crossed the bonus sprint finish line first, ahead of guess who? Abdul Japarov. Here we go again. 2 more sprints to come today in the fight for the green jersey. You know, before yesterday's tribute ride, we had been watching the fastest tour in history, but the pace in this heat today has been slow.
But as we come along now towards the last 55, 60 miles of today's stage, we do have an attack on, the first serious attack of the day, and Thierry Marie of France has gone clear. But as you well know, Paul, this is the hottest area of France.
It certainly is, and today it's really going to be hot, hot, hot all the way for the riders. 100 degrees Fahrenheit is actually what is expected this afternoon, and not very much real wind to cool down the riders, with a slight westerly wind of 10 kilometers an hour, which could cool them down.
And there is Thierry Marie. Sorry about the little bit of picture breakup. It's due to the trees and the buildings in the town we are now going through. But Thierry Marie here, building his lead to just over a minute. And this is the man who back in 1991 put on the record books the second longest lone break in the history of the Tour de France. It was 232 kilometers, which is just over 150 miles. He was alone. What a great, memorable victory that was. He also took on the leader's yellow jersey for the second time that Tour, because he'd won the prologue as well in that year. Anyway, his lead's going up, Paul. It's almost 1.5 minutes, and it might be the opportunist break that Castorama have been looking for.
It could be. They've had a hard time in this year's Tour de France. You know, Jackie Durand won the first yellow jersey of the Tour by winning the prologue in Saint-Brieuc. But I think, you know, what will happen a little bit later, we'll see one or two of the sprinters teams coming to the front. Abdou-Japarov was the last man to win here. He's on the Novell squad at the moment. His team may well come to the front to try and chase down, but also the Telecom team that have Eric Zabel, another reputed sprinter, may well move to the front. We're still 60 miles to go.
Paul, one more note on yesterday. All the riders were given the same finishing time, 7 hours, 50 minutes, 12 seconds, as Andrea Perron, Casartelli's roommate, crossed the finish line first. Therefore, Indurain, Zula, Riche, Jalabert, and Gotti. As a matter of fact, the entire overall standings do not change. Back on the course, Thierry Marie, a specialist in solitary efforts, usually wins his races with solo breakaways.
Thierry Marie knows only too well the task he faces now, and he knows he needs at least 4 minutes, I would think, if he's going to hold them off into Bordeaux. There's no hills at all on the route today. We've already seen Laurent Jalabert win that sprint of 58 kilometres. There were the two small climbs that came before that sprint. Eric Decker won the first one ahead of Laurent Brochard and Claudio Chiappucci, and on the second climb of the day at Orenzon, Laurent Brochard was first this time, Claudio was second, and Marco Serpellini was third. You'll note that the King of the Mountains, 1995, Richard Virenque, didn't bother to contest those two climbs at all.
I don't think he needs to worry too much about the few climbs that remain on the way up to Paris at the moment, because he's got such a lead in that competition that he really is already crowned, I think, as the winner of the competition.
The only other sprint of the day, which is really worth a mention, which wasn't shown on our television cameras at all, was the sprint which came at 50 miles, 80 kilometres, and it was called the Prime Louis Ocaña, the man who rode such a brilliant race to win the Tour de France in 1973, and of course the man who crashed out of the race back on the Col de Monte in 1971. Well, Louis Ocaña died last year, and in memory to him today, there was a prize of £4,000 for the first man into Ocaña's former hometown of Copen-d'Armagnac, and it was won by Johan Museu of Belgium.
Thierry Marie now has to get into his rhythm and decide that this is going to be a very long effort for him today. He's still now got something like 67 kilometers to go before he gets to the finish, and at the moment in the main field there is no reaction at all. It's still, as we've seen many days in the Tour de France so far, the Banesto squad at the front setting a tempo. They're not too worried about chasing down Thierry Marie. They will wait, I think, until later when the teams of the big sprinters come to the front and help them.
And there we can see Banesto driving at the front of the race, and Miguel Indurain feeling no pressure at all today. It's not the day to attack the leader of the Tour de France. It would be folly. This is a day to offer to the others in the race. Miguel will be looking to the time trial on Saturday to try and increase his overall lead. And so, as we watch the peloton head towards the finish in Bordeaux today, if we could just be permitted to say thank you for all your faxes, phone calls that you have sent us since over these past 2 days, which of course has been difficult for everybody on the Tour de France. They have been appreciated, and where applicable we have passed those comments on to the Motorola cycling team. Anyway, as the field is now regrouping, just on 2 minutes behind the leader on the road, Thierry Marie, it's a good time for us to take a break.
Stage 17 of the 95 Tour de France continues as the peloton chases Thierry Marie in 100-degree heat. Marie has already won 6 stages of the Tour de France. Today he is looking for his 7th.
Quite a conversation going on here, Paul, with Thierry Marie and Jean-René Bernadotte.
Well, Bernadotte will be giving him the latest information on what's going on behind. He'll explain to him the fact that there is no reaction from the main field at the moment, and what he has to do is at this part of the race build up as big a lead as possible, because once he gets nearer to Bordeaux, the main speed of the race will speed up and they will actually pull him back. 54 kilometers to go at the moment, so if he can get something like 6 or 7 minutes before the final 40 kilometers, he has a chance of staying away and taking the stage victory.
So that's 33 miles to the finish, and his lead is up to around about 2 minutes and 35 seconds. We're in the town here of Langon, which a few years ago in the 1970s, it was one of the stage towns when the Tour organization used to run 3 stages of the race in one day. We used to start at 7 o'clock in the morning, have 2 stage finishes by 4 in the afternoon, and then go on a 3rd stage, which would finish around 7 o'clock in the evening. Those were tough days, not just for the riders, but for the journalists as well. and this is one of the start towns. Anyway, the race now about 2.5 minutes behind the leader, Thierry Marie. Now, you might like to know the oldest and the youngest winners of the Tour de France over the years. In 1922, Firmin Lambeau was the oldest man to win the Tour. He was 36 years of age, and the youngest rider ever to win the Tour was Cornet, and he did that in 1904 when he was 20, and he wouldn't have won, but they disqualified all of the leading riders at the end for collusion, and Cornet, some months after the Tour had finished, found himself declared the winner. In 1980, though, interestingly to note, Joop Zoetemelk won the Tour when he was 34 years of age, and that was on the occasion when Bernard Hinault was in the yellow jersey at Pau, rather fittingly, because we've left Pau today, and he retired in the evening, and I can remember him calling a press conference, I think it was about 9:30 at night, to say he wouldn't start next day because of a knee injury, and as a result, Paul, Zoetemelk wouldn't pull on the yellow jersey next day, would he?
No, that's something that seems to happen in the Tour de France. In fact, Eddy Merckx didn't do that either when Luis Ocaña crashed out of the Tour in 1971. But you know, one of the amazing things about Luis Ocaña is he was such a fighter and such a real man, and he came from this part of France. He loved to race in the heat, and he went to the Tour de France in 1973 when Eddy Merckx didn't start, and he walked away with stage victory. But I feel sure that if he had gone to the start with Eddy Merckx that year, that in fact he still would have beaten him.
But sadly, we will never know. And you might like to know, too, that Laurent Fignon, the man who lost the Tour by 8 seconds to Greg LeMond on the Champs-Élysées back in 1989, he was very young when he won his first Tour in 1983. He was only 23 years of age. And then he went on, of course, when he was 24 to win the 1984 Tour de France. I thought you might like to know that. And we're now watching the peloton. They've just gone over the Garonne, which goes down to Bordeaux. The riders are going a slightly longer route on the main road here.
It's a very tough run in as well, because as they get closer to Bordeaux, we get a little bit closer to the Gironde and the Garonne, and the wind starts to come down from the sea a little bit, and that will push the riders across, and we may well see them forming echelons across the road as they speed up into town.
And Thierry Marie now in Saint-Maxime, so the kilometres or the miles are ticking off quite quickly at the moment. His lead is still just below 3 minutes on the road. And the sun behind, a little bit of a cloud at the moment, but believe me, it is extremely hot today and very, very humid indeed. Now, just to revert back to yesterday, as we know, the Motorola team were given the opportunity to go to the finishing line together, and as a result, the race was in effect neutralized yesterday. So the race referees, who we call the commissaires, decided there would be no official results yesterday. The winner's time for the record books was 7 hours and 50 minutes, but they did not name a winner. Although perhaps we should remember that it was Andrea Perrone, the Italian roommate of Fabio Casatelli, who was projected over the line first by his Motorola teammates. However, the record book will never show that because no winner was officially decided. All of the competitions on the route, the King of the Mountains and the Green Jersey Points competition, they did count and they did apply to the overall classification. The winner's time of 7 hours 50 minutes was applied to every rider in the race, so in effect there was no change in the Tour de France overall yesterday.
Well, Phil, as we put yesterday finally behind us, ahead of us potentially the first stage win since 1992 for Thierry Marie. And this kind of heat can only mean one thing, that NFL summer camps are open. And that means the premiere of NFL Prime Monday on ESPN. Former Green Bay Packers wide receiver Sterling Sharp makes his ESPN studio debut with Mike Tirico and the latest NFL news and information from the preseason right through the playoffs. The premiere of NFL Prime Monday at 7:30 Eastern, live on ESPN.
And action.
Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?
Again, please.
Again?
Again.
Art thou bored?
Yeah.
Step into a Slim Jim. Turn to the spice. That baby juicy taste. Need a little excitement? Step into a Slim Jim.
Adrian, Karsten, Phil Liggett, and Paul Sherwen watching Thierry Marie, who's been out on his own riding through the vineyards of Bordeaux here in stage 17 for the last 25 miles. But now the peloton is beginning to close the gap with about 20 miles left to go in the race. Back on the course now with Phil.
And the peloton now in full cry, and the gap is really tumbling down. Thierry Marie is clear now by 1 minute and 28 seconds. And just about 3 or 4 miles ago, that lead was almost 3 minutes.
It was, but you know, they are decided today that they want the sprinters to have their chance. It is a place where sprinters have always manifested themselves on the streets of Bordeaux. In fact, just outside here by Bordeaux-le-Lac. And in fact, it looks to me now as if Thierry Marie is deciding to slow down a little bit more, because he realizes that it's not going to be long before the main field comes back to him.
And Thierry Marie showing us just how hot it is out there today as he happily takes the drink. Now, you may have seen the big professional trick there, because when he takes the bottle, he didn't let go of it, Jean-Marie Bernadotte. He made sure his man took a good sling off it to increase his pace just a little bit. It's a professional trick that everybody normally turns a blind eye to, right, Paul?
Well, unless you insist for too long, if you hold on to that bottle for more than about 10 meters, the commissaire will give you a nice big fine in the evening, which will have to be paid for in Swiss francs.
Paul Sherwen spent a lot of money that way, right?
But I didn't get caught very often, Phil, unless you actually snitched on me. That was the unfortunate
thing.
I'd
never have done that. Well, talking about the bigger riders in the Tour de France this year, Paul, what about Tony Rominger? Because I think he'd be quite disappointed. Again, he's come to a Tour de France. He's had a second in the past, but that was a one-off result. He's never really come into his own this year, has he?
No, he hasn't, you know, but he hasn't always been a great contender in the Tour de France. He had one big Tour de France. I think he puts an awful lot of his energy and preparation into riding well in the Tour of Spain and also riding the Tour of Italy this year, which he won for the first time.
Well, Rominger has won 3 Tours of Spain, and that's a record in itself. He was the first Swiss rider for over 30 years to win the Tour of Italy just before this race started. But he's always kept his great performances for races where Miguel Indurain is not riding. I mean, he is still the world number 1 and will be the world number 1 at the end of this race, because he started this race with almost double the ranking points of Big Mig.
I wonder sometimes that it may well be that he's got a psychological barrier against beating Miguel Indurain. He beat his world hour record at the end of last year, but the fact is he retired from the Tour de France and went away specially to prepare for that, whereas Indurain rode it off the back of his Tour de France performance.
And indeed, Rominger has said today, in fact, that the death of Fabio Casatelli has indicated to him that he would really like to just stay away from bicycle racing for a short while.
Phil, let's take a short while, to review the highlights of the race so far and the Michelin race summary. 117 riders left the city of Pau today in a hot 150-mile ride. Thierry Marie broke away at mile 106. His biggest lead on the field, close to 3 minutes, but now the sprinters are beginning to close the gap. Well, moments ago, Phil described that one of the elements of Tony Rominger's career is frustration. This is his 5th Tour de France. His best finish was 2nd on the podium in 1993. But this is still Tony Rominger territory. There was no frustration here back on November 5th of 1994. Just beyond the finish line here is the Velodrome, and this houses the fastest cycling track in Europe, as Tony Rominger proved late last year. On the hardwood surface, in exactly 60 minutes, Tony Rominger averaged 34.5 miles in 1 hour, smashing the previous record established in the same place by Miguel Indurain. Tony Rominger has said that his victory this year in the Tour of Italy already satisfied his season. The dissatisfaction comes in the fact that he has never beaten Indurain for the victory in any major tour. Right now, Frenchman Thierry Marie is doing what he loves best, going hard with wide open road in front of him. Better enjoy it while he can, because things are beginning to happen behind him in the peloton. Let's get back to Phil Liggett.
20 kilometers to go for the race now, and Thierry Marie is hanging on just about, Paul. He's down to about 35 seconds, and there's the peloton not far behind.
In fact, it's tumbling as we speak, Phil, because it's now down to 25 seconds at the moment. The main, in fact, 24 seconds is the confirmation. All the teams of the sprinters are at the front trying to chase down Thierry Marie, but what could happen here is we've got 4 teams at the front chasing to try and bring back Thierry Marie, and what I think may well happen is they've chased so hard over the last 25 miles that we may well see a break situation form here.
Well, the Telecom is mainly the team who have tried to bring him back. They're thinking of their sprinter Eric Zabel, but also the Polti team have also chased very, very hard today, and they're thinking of Giovanni Lombardi and possibly Giovanni Fidanza, also a good sprinter on the Polti squad. But as Paul Sherwen has said, there's been a lot of work put into this. The escape by Thierry Marie has really done a little bit of damage to them. They didn't expect to have to chase down a lone breakaway, I don't think.
Not so early and not for so long. There's Thierry Marie taking maximum points as he goes through the sprint point there. He's got to keep his courage and keep going as hard as he can, because behind him the main field are flying along now at something like 35 miles an hour.
And Oncé moving up because they have the man in the green jersey who wants the second place on the line, and look at him go. He sprints with so much confidence. He went away and got the sprint at Saint-Mont at the start of the day, clearly taking the second place here now, and I really feel as though Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov has hoisted the white flag of surrender. And Jalabert now, there's no doubt that he's going to win that green jersey when he gets to Paris. He's won it once before, and Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov has won it 3 times in the past. And there's a beautiful picture of the Tour de France as they head round what is a huge roundabout down there. Coming back together again, and Miguel Indurain has got himself out front saying, well, here I am, guys, the sun is shining.
He really has a superb Tour de France this year. The man who's been at the front nearly every time we've come onto the run into the stage finishes, Miguel Indurain, wearing number 1, the winner of 4 Tour de France's so far, and a quick look across by Eddie Bowmans and a smile saying, we know you're the strongest, but today we have to do our job. We want to take our sprinters up there.
And the rider we haven't seen is now having a great day of racing. He's heading the line here, Georg Tochnig, the Austrian, number 91. Playing the perfect team domestique. He tries to pull the Polti team back into the action. The Polti team, until that nasty crash which involved Fabio Casatelli, lost the first rider there of their team, Dirk Boldinger, the German rider who won the stage last year, the Tour of South Africa, the Report Tour. He's in his first year as a pro, and sadly he broke his hip in that nasty pile-up. And also going yesterday on the Polti team in tears, because nobody likes to abandon the Tour de France, was the French rider Eric Boyer. So they've now lost 2 men on Polti. Until then they were rivaling Benesto as the only 2 teams with nobody out of the race.
Tim Marley's now down to 21 seconds on the line there, and in fact he's really insisting. He feels that he can hold on, but I think at the last possible minute here he's trying to just get a little bit more publicity for Castorama.
It's rather like trying to hold the floodwaters back with your little finger, I think, because if he looked over his shoulder now he would see all of the Tour de France chasing him down. There's no way the Castorama team can now control this. There is the confirmation of that sprint. We've just seen the 3rd man, the lead-out man for Jalabert, was Melchior Mauri, who is also finishing a great Tour de France for him. He'll go home, by the look of it now, in 6th place in Paris, although he'll have a little bit of a fight in the time trial, possibly with Fernando Escartin, who's in 7th place at the moment. Just 10 miles or 16 kilometers left to run for Thierry Marie. So near and yet so far.
Definitely. You know, the sprinters want to have their day today. They haven't had a chance to sprint since the 7th of July, which really is amazing when you think today is the 20th. They've been sitting around in the back of the bunch, dragging their bodies over some of the biggest mountains in France, just waiting for the occasion to do that on these stages today, tomorrow, and the Champs-Élysées, which again should be a great day for the sprinters. So that's why they don't want a lone man like Thierry Marie to steal the day from them.
There's Tochnig. And the team behind here, we have the Nobel and the Telecom and the Polti. They're the riders, they're the teams left, the few teams left with any sprinters still in this race, because this has been a strange race for the sprinters. That first opening week, which was their domain, of course, there were many crashes, and we lost some of the best sprinters there, including Fabio Baldato. Then we went into the hills, and out on the very first range in the Alps, we lost Mario Cipollini, who won 2 stages in that opening week. So it could be a difficult sprint, actually, Paul, because apart from Abdou-Japarov and Jalabert and Zabel and Giovanni Lombardi, I can't think of anybody else, really, who could challenge them.
Well, there is one man, I think, maybe an outsider, Frankie Andreu, who finished 2nd here when the Tour de France last came to Bordeaux in 1993, although then it wasn't a bunch sprint situation. There was a group of 20 riders got clear at the end, and Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov had actually slipped into that move. But, you know, Frankie is a good sprinter. He played fairly well in the first few days of this Tour de France, and maybe he'd like to try and get up there today and do something and dedicate it to his lost teammate Fabio Casatelli.
I'm sure he would, Paul. Also, as unforgettable, that near win in the last stage of last year's tour, right on the Champs-Élysées. Well, we're still 3 days away from that. Stage 18 tomorrow, another 104 miles on the flats. Be sure to join us at 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, 11 p.m. on the Dews for Stage 18. More Stage 17 continues in a moment. We're back with less than 10 miles to go to the finish. Thierry Marie has really made the field work over the last 41 miles, but his lead now is just seconds.
The pack now have the man in their sights. It's the psychological gap now. They've got somebody has to make the final decision to reach him.
They do, but Thierry Marie also has to make the final decision to desist, because he isn't going to do that at the moment. He's fighting all the way until the last minute, really prolonging his agony, hoping that maybe he'll get into the town, get into some corners, and then the riders will sit up and let him go. But you know, now that they've got so close, they're not going to let you go, Thierry.
No, what a great competitor this man has been over the years. And you've never a Tour de France has gone by when we haven't known that Thierry Marie was taking part in it. Now he looks over his shoulder, Paul. Now he sees the sight that always sends the shivers down your back, because the riders are now right behind. But he's still not going to give up. Thierry Marie are trying to hold them off. This for him, his 11th Tour de France. And now somebody from Lamprey is trying to reach him. Now this is an interesting move, because they don't have a real sprinter now. They lost their sprinter, Jan Azarada. I'm wondering if it might be Serpellini, because he's been very active today.
This is in fact the youngest rider in the race, Serpellini, who was a very close friend of Fabio Casatelli as well, and he's decided that he doesn't want the race to be the sprinters' race today, and he waited for just the moment when they were about to catch Thierry Marie, and he launched himself out of that main pack.
So Serpellini having a go. And he was also the youngest rider in the race last year, but he didn't make the finish last year. Well, this year he's 1 year older, and he's going to make the finish.
Well, it's a superb move. That's the kind of thing that you have to wait for. When a couple of teams are at the front and they're doing an awful lot of work to close down on a rabbit, that rabbit today was Thierry Marie, just at the moment when they catch it, there's a psychological closing down, because they feel as if they've just closed the job, but they've done what they needed to do, and then that's the moment to go over the top.
The pack's still working very, very well behind and trying to keep everything under control here, Paul. And there is Thierry Marie. It looks as though he's calling it a day. And he's going to have to hang on, in fact, now, because having paid the price of trying to keep away, he's going to have to hope he can finish with the group.
He's put an awful lot of energy into that move, you know, but it won't be very difficult for him to stay in the main field now, because he only has about 12 kilometers to go, and he should be able to get into the slipstream of the rest of this group. Only 117 riders left in the Tour de France this morning. A reflection, I feel, on how difficult the race has been this year.
So the field is now in pursuit of a different rider, Marco Serpellini. The Lamprey team, who are now a bit of a headless team because they lost their team leader, Mauricio Fondriest, and they've also lost their sprinter, Jan Zverada.
Phil, those sprinters could make the difference as we head toward the finish line. Now quickly another Michelin race summary. Thierry Marie still had a 21-second lead on the fast-closing field with 9 miles to go. But 2 miles later, as Marie was engulfed by the peloton, Marco Serpellini counterattacked and is now 10 seconds ahead of the field, trying to hold off those sprinters. Phil, take us over the bridge.
Pont de Pierre. 23-year-old Marco Serpellini out in front. He'll be 24 next month. So, thinking back, Longfignon, 23 years of age, when he won his first Tour de France in 1983.
As the riders here come over the Garonne and the streets of Bordeaux, it looks very much as if it's all over for Marco Serpellini. It was an extremely good move, but the Telecom riders still at the front. They're keeping the pace high, but they've got to expect over the next couple of kilometers 1 or 2 attacks like that, and that is what they will not want to happen. They'll want to keep it all together so that when they come into the final corner here, Eric Zabel has a great chance of taking the stage victory, a second one after the one that he took in Charleroi some time ago.
Told you it's hot. This is traditionally one of the hottest parts of France in the summertime. Another tradition here, a great sprint to the finish.
We used to have the finish here, in fact, and it was on this little stretch road where Davis Finney from the United States won his stage. We're going, of course, in the opposite direction. We came in this way, around a little loop, and came back the opposite way to finish. But now we go straight through the city and out to the famous lake, which is on the outskirts of Bordeaux, and that's where the finish is. 8 kilometers still to ride.
And an awful lot of hard work that these riders at the front have to do if they want to stop any of those lone breakaways going as we get a little bit closer to the finish. This is the German champion Udo Bolz riding at the front, number 202. A little bit further down will be Jens Heppner, his teammate. As soon as Bolz has done his turn at the front, he will switch off and let his teammate come in, and they will start to try put themselves into a formation that will take Erik Zabel into an ideal position for the final sprint.
Udo Bolz had a much quieter tour than last year. He finished 9th last year. He had a great journey through the mountains, much quieter this year. But he is the champion of Germany, and the rider now leading the pace through for the Novell team is Franz Massen. He's riding to a finish in this year's tour. He retired last year, and in fact that was the first race he had retired as a professional, and he was very ill and very upset he had to do so a year ago. He's going to finish this year, though.
Well, this is Jens Heppner on the front from the Telecom team, and it's quite interesting to see this mixture of teams. As we've said earlier, a lot of teams not a full complement as they get nearer to the end of the Tour de France, and they're having to find allies today to work together. They all have a job in hand. They all want to get their sprints to the front before we get to the finish line. And taking over now is a man from the Novell squad. This is Arvis Piziks, actually a Latvian rider. They're probably the only one to finish this year's Tour de France after the withdrawal of Kaspars Ozers.
He looks like a sprinter. His saddle looks as though he could do lifting up a centimetre or so, but he's done his bit at the front, and now Udo Bolz is back through again. Followed by Jens Heppner. Heppner, by the way, in his first Tour de France, promised much. He finished 10th in it. He hasn't repeated that defeat yet. Now, Big Mig himself is intruding on the scene.
Well, he may well come up with a big surprise. You know, he's always wanted to win a road stage of the Tour de France. 6 kilometers to go as they take the little road to the left, which is one that I know extremely well. It takes them away from the Garonne and up towards the area called Bordeaux-le-Lac, where the great sports palace is here, and where also there's a great exhibition hall as well. The riders know this finish because they've done it so many times before, but maybe the man in yellow has got something up his sleeve and he's just trying to beat the sprinters.
Well, you know, we never talk about Miguel Indurain as a sprinter, but he can finish with a very fast sprint indeed if he's motivated enough to do so. We've seen him use his sprint in World Championships when he's raced for a medal place, and he's had silver in the World Championships. So he can sprint. So if he's decided he might want to, well, who knows? But we've now got an attack being launched, and we expected these attacks to come. This is the Brasilia team who are now trying to get away quickly, and the man I'd expect is probably Perini.
In fact, it's the MG team. 2 riders from MG have gone. One's Flavio Vanzella. It looks very much as if the other one was Rolf Jährmann. Now, there is a surprise. They've sat at the back all the time, let the other riders do it, and 2 of them have gone together to try and build this gap.
Well, this is Vanzella in the front. He wore the yellow jersey briefly last year when the race left to Great Britain, and Flavio hasn't been seen too much of it this year. The other rider is Rolf Jährmann, a former Swiss champion, and it's amazing when 2 men can get away just like that, Paul, and look at the gap they've opened.
Excellent teamwork. You know, they've gone together. They know it's too difficult to get away a lone rider against the organisation of all the big teams there. There are 4 teams chasing behind. You know, we have Polti, Novell, Telecom, and possibly the Once would come up a little bit later on. They realised they had to go together, and I've very rarely seen that in the closing stages of a stage of the Tour de France.
So a good move as they now scamper across Bordeaux, heading out towards the lake. The gap is opening now, and as Paul has already said, the teams find organising a chase a little bit more difficult now. We're on the other side of the 2 famous mountain chains in France because they don't have the power behind the chase anymore. Some of them don't have sprinters, some don't have the men to help the sprinters. They've left this tour now.
5 kilometers to go for these 2 riders now, and there is a slight chance that they could survive, you know, because the 2 of them will work equally together, where if we're on separate teams, the one may well hold back a little bit. They've got a 5-second advantage over the main field at the moment, and Vanzella here digging extremely deep. They know this is the hardest part. There's a slight climb over the river here as they come towards the finish in the Bordeaux-le-Lac, and they look over their shoulders. The gap is starting to increase a bit. They've got about 100 meters.
Well, Vanzella took one look over his shoulder, got that great feeling when he didn't see anybody chasing, and has continued the power. This is a desperate escape now by 2 riders on the same team, and I can't remember this happening before coming into Bordeaux.
Phil, this just points out that no matter how late in the Tour we get, no matter how many miles are left, no matter how many of the original 9 are left, teamwork is still important. Well, in a rare move here, two riders from the same team have broken away, building up a 9-second lead, Paul.
It's an excellent gap, but it's very, very difficult to hold off a big bunch that is chasing down at the moment, but it may well be that the sprinters now have been taken by surprise. These two men made an excellent move there, as just getting rid of the bottle, lightening the load. There's only about 5 minutes of effort left to go, but behind you see the main field is really strung out. They're giving everything they've got to get up to these two men.
And there's the gap you can see quite clearly from the helicopter position of the two rabbits who are trying to escape the hounds here. They keep looking over the shoulders, but they may as well just get on with it, because if they're caught they will have nothing left anyway. And there's the field now just behind them, just on 3 kilometers left to go to the line. Two riders from the same MG team, a team which is led by Gianni Bugno. Incidentally, Gianni Bugno lost the Amstel Gold Race, a classic race, to Ralph Yeoman a couple of years back when they were on rival teams. Now they're on the same team, Paul, but it makes no difference because the field, the sprinters, are being dragged back into this race today. They refuse to give up what is their stage.
Well, that was excellent, and it looks very much as if it was Neil Stevens, the Onse rider, who's come up there. 3 kilometers to go. He's decided now it's time for Onse to do their job for Laurent Jalabert, so he may well be looking to finally take the green jersey up to Paris, and if he gets a good placing today, he may well have won it completely.
It's been a marvellous, marvellous tour for the young Aussie, Neil Stevens. Well, he's not so young now, but he'd like me to say that anyway, as he now swings off the front. He's been the super domestic of Onse, and again he's closed it right down for Laurent Jalabert. The Polti team are thinking of their man now, the boys at the front here of Giovanni Lombardi. Watch for the green jersey. You can see him hovering about 5 or 6 men down. The man we very rarely see at this stage of the race is the small Tashkent Terror, Jamaluddin Abdul-Japarov, but the attacks have been launched again, and this time going clear now for the Onse team, I think, is Herminio Diaz-Zabala.
They really are putting the pressure on. The Nobel rider was straight up there as well. That looks very much as if it's the long shape of Eric Decker getting in there. He wants his man Jamaluddin Abdul-Japarov to have a chance. All over the road now at the moment. There's not very far to go. We should soon see the 2 kilometer banner. Then the riders will be just around the far side of the park here, and it will be great finish for the sprinters today. They're all over the road.
And you can see by the way the bunch fanned then that somebody in the middle was trying to make a little bit more space, and they pushed on a bit. Now this is the man that Paul Sherwen mentioned earlier might try to go, Jesper Skibby. He's been joined by the biggest man in the race, Eros Poli.
Well, they too have not waited. You know, they decided we couldn't get rid of the sprinters today. They waited just for the moment when everybody was slowing down. There's always a moment in a sprint when there's a slight slowing down of the main field, and they've got a great gap at the moment, but still the sprinters teams are at the front. They're putting the pressure on. They know they've got to get back up to these two riders. Skibby looks over his shoulder. That's how he lost the stage a couple of days ago, when he was looking over too much.
So Skibby and Eros Poli has gone. Poli now has gone through. These two riders quite committed to work together here and hang on if they can. They're giving the sprinters, the few that are left in this race, a really rough ride to the finish.
Well, Poli is one man who can hold off the whole bunch if anyone in this field can. He's a member of the Mercatoni Uno squad of Mario Cipollini. Only 4 riders left in that squad. He's used to doing this. He's used to giving a big turn of gas at the end of a stage for his teammate Mario Cipollini. Today he's doing it for himself. They're coming up now to the red kite. 1 kilometer to go.
Well, this could be the great escape in sight of the sprinters, because Jesper Skibby is a good finisher in a group of 2, and Eros Poli is prepared to work with him right up to the line here. We think the Nobel man joining is Vyacheslav Yekimov. He was a good candidate for victory, and I mentioned it earlier, and Yekimov starts the sprint now. Yekimov goes for the line, and Poli tries to get on his wheels. Skibby is the man in the middle here now, but Vyacheslav Yekimov, he's twice won a stage of the Tour de France before. He reached them at about 800 meters to go, but Skibby is going to get his wheel. It could be that Yekimov has gone just a little bit too soon. Jesper Skibby trying to get onto his back wheel and come out of his slipstream, as Zabel and the boys try to wind up for the sprinters behind. Jalabert in green is washed away, but as they come up towards the line now, Skibby starts to sprint for the line. The sprinters are on his shoulder now. Abdul-Japarov goes off to our right with Giovanni. Jalabert is coming through as they come up to the line now. Laurent Jalabert, Zabel comes up to the line. What a finish by the sprinters. Eric Zabel gets it on the line from Abdul-Japarov, I think. My goodness me, the sprinters took it in the end, but what a race.
Phil, no one obviously had to tell the sprinters about the tradition here and the sprint to the finish in Bordeaux. It was Eric Zabel just nosing out Jamaluddin Abdujaparov, one of the best sprinters in the world, but he was all over the final 100 yards that could have cost him the victory. We thought for a time that Miguel Indurain might make a move, but he finished 24th, Pantani 25th. Thierry Marie led for over 30 miles, but could not win today's stage. We'll be back. Well, Eric Zabel's all fired up. Has reason to be. Watch your step there, Eric. He just won today's stage 17. He also won back on his birthday on July 7th. Phil?
Just look at this for a finish. Eric Zabel is on the right in the pink, and then as Skibby dropped away from it, Giovanni Lombardi couldn't match him either. Then came the Tashkent Terror, shoulder to shoulder, his bike going in every direction, but the same way as him, and Abdujaparov couldn't quite reach the side of Eric Zabel. The young man who celebrated his birthday in Charleroi with a victory now gets a second stage win here, and it was a clear one at that.
Overall, Phil, Miguel Indurain still leads the 1995 Tour de France. In second, Alex Zula. Bjarne Riis must make up 3 minutes and 14 seconds over the final 3 days of the Tour to pass Zula for second place. Remember how well he did in the first individual time trial? Well, the second one is coming up Saturday. In any language, they love their Indurain around here. In this case, it's Spanish. All he has to do is survive, really, the next 3 days. He has been beaten in the second individual time trial in the Tour in the past couple of years. For Laurent Jalabert, well, he's doing the best he can to finally clinch the overall green sprinter's jersey for 95. Abdujaparov did it back in 94. They are rivals. The leader of the 1995 Tour de France is Miguel Indurain. The world's greatest cycling event has traveled 2,031 miles, still 228 left to go. Be sure to join us tomorrow for stage 18 when the Tour begins in Montpon-Ménestérol and ends in Limoges. Coverage begins on ESPN at 3 in the afternoon, 11 o'clock at night on ESPN2. For Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen, and our entire ESPN Tour de France team, I'm Adrian Karsten.
ESPN's coverage of the 1995 Tour de France has been presented by Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.